Welcome to Manitowoc Garage. Today's video we'll be discussing the suspension features on a GMK4100L-1. This will be a two-part video. Part one will show you how to operate the suspension via the carrier cab, and in part two we'll show you how to operate the active suspension via the HMI control modules. From the carrier display located in the carrier cab, we will next access the suspension menu. We will first select the menu button. Next, we will highlight and select the suspension icon. And now we have access to the suspension menu. Anytime you're operating the suspension on the carrier, from the carrier display, you need to have the suspension in an unlocked condition. This is indicated by the icon on the right side here, showing currently that the suspension is in a locked condition. We will not be able to operate the suspension in this condition. So we will navigate to the lock and unlock icon by using the arrow buttons. This icon now allows us to unlock the suspension by selecting OK. The icon turns green and now the suspension is unlocked. To lock the suspension, again we hit the OK, and now the suspension is in a locked condition. This is also needs to be done anytime we are driving the crane. The suspension needs to be in an unlocked condition so it has the ability to oscillate as we go across terrain. So next we will unlock the suspension, and now we have indicator items here that tells us the different suspension groups. The GMK4100 has 4 suspension groups. So we have the ability to select the front suspension group, left side suspension group, rear suspension group, right side suspension group, and then the middle icon allows us to select all 4 suspension groups, thus allowing us to raise and lowering the suspension of whichever group we decide to pick. Pressure indicators for all the suspension groups are shown so we can see how much pressure is currently in the suspension group. The icon on the lower left is for auto level or highway travel. This is not used to level the crane, it's actually used to put the suspension at midpoint for traveling on the highway. The icon in the middle is representing that the suspension is currently at highway travel, with the 2 arrows pointing at each other. Next we will select a suspension group. We will select the front suspension group. We'll hit the OK button, and now it highlights, showing us that we have selected the front suspension group. At the same time, we also get menu buttons there that allow us to raise and lower the suspension. We will use the faceplate buttons up and down to make this happen. First we will select lowering the front suspension. You see the pressure dropping in the front, and the front of the crane is lowering. To raise the suspension, we will select the up button, and now the suspension is raising. You see that once we did that, we lost our highway level, and we are currently in off-road mode for driving. We can fix this by selecting the highway level button, which we will do later in the video. If we want to escape the front group and maybe move to another group, we select the OK button again, and now we can navigate to the rear, the left, or the right. So we will select the rear group, and now we can raise or lower the rear suspension. And again, you can see the pressure raising and lowering as we raise and lower the different suspension groups. If I wanted to raise the whole crane, I would select OK to escape from the rear, move to the center icon, select OK, And now we selected all 4 suspension groups. And again, we can raise or lower all 4 suspension groups at one time. Once finished, if we need to put the crane back to highway level or driving level, we will highlight the icon in the lower left and do that. First, we have to select OK to escape our previous selection. We will navigate down to the highway travel button, and we hold the OK button down. And what we're looking for here is to see the 2 arrows pointing at each other on the crane symbol. Once that gets to that point, we are now at auto level. And again, this is not saying the crane is level. This is looking at the midpoint of the 4 struts, 2 on the very front, 2 on the very rear, looking at the proximity switches in those struts to know that we are at the midspan of the strut stroke. Now we could drive the crane down the highway, and of course we have to have it unlocked also to be in that condition. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Man Talk Garage. Be sure to tune back in the future for more videos. Thank you.